Okay, I thought to make all of this a little more interesting, I should start ranking every single thing that I play, even though this is only based off of impressions of games and not like definitive playthroughs. But we're gonna be able to see how things compare to each other, in my opinion. So, the very first game I played was The Witcher 3. And to me, it's a game where it's like the story's kind of mostly written well. It's written well in terms of dialogue, but the combat's really bad. So I know that's going to make people upset, but to me, it puts it on C for me. And then one of the next games I played was um, Lego Marvel Avengers. And to me, a lot of the Lego games, they're sort of subpar because they're kind of baby games. And then another game I tried to play next was XCOM Interceptor. And I couldn't get it to run really, so that's why I have this bottom dead category, because it was sort of DOA. And then Deponia Doomsday, to me, it's kind of mean spirited. It's not that it isn't well made, like, it's well made in a sense, in that it looks pretty artistically and it's well animated and stuff. But just the writing feels mean spirited to me. Sleeping Dogs is a game that has you play an undercover cop trying to infiltrate the Triad in Hong Kong. And it's sort of a similar game to the old Mad Max game and Arkham City, in my opinion, where you essentially have an overworld map and you run around and you grab stuff and you do dedicated missions, and it's sort of similar combat to those games where you punch and you can counter with a button, and it's mostly melee. There's a few weapons and stuff like you'd see in Arkham City, so it's kind of similar-ish combat. So they try to portray the story in a dramatic, generally serious way, and it portrays the main character as torn between being kind of like a criminal and being a cop. But he's intended to and primarily meant to be a cop, but it's supposed to give him a kind of moral emotional struggle. So it's not a question of loyalty necessarily. And they do a kind of morally gray thing where the triad's really brutal, but there's some concept of loyalty, and the police are about protecting the innocent and enforcing order, but they are willing to do some things that are a little corrupt, like setting up a crime scene, which is in one of the missions you do early on. So it's supposed to portray everyone as not good, basically. To me, the whole game feels very like Hollywood in a way. And I know that's sort of a weird thing to say, but I mean, there's kind of a Western tinge to this. It doesn't help that pretty much everything's dubbed in English, so that helps make it seem more like a Hollywood movie. But they don't portray the Asian cultural side in Hong Kong really. Like when you play something like Yakuza, there's sort of more of the social side of Japan portrayed. And I know it's a different country. It's nothing alike. But they still show that sort of Asian cultural side of Japan. It's not just a bunch of action. Sleeping Dogs tends to be a bunch of action. So there's very little to hint at the culture of Hong Kong. So it may as well have been Los Angeles or something with how little they get into it. So it tends to have a lot of the aesthetics of Hong Kong. So to me, that's sort of a shortcoming of this. Like, to me, I don't get that feeling like this is really Hong Kong. So I kind of wish they were more rounded about showing everything and getting into the social, cultural aspects of it. There's some imposition of Western morality occasionally. Like, there's been at least one time or so that I saw a character denouncing racism in a way that kind of felt out of place or unnecessary. But that's how these games tend to be. It's not about authenticity a lot of times. I think to me, if you like the old Mad Max game that came out, I think it was by Square Enix, it's most similar to that, in my opinion, as far as like a gameplay thing where you're just sort of running around getting collectibles, getting into fights, and then doing story stuff. I'll admit they're still significantly different games, but they're a similar type of open world game where you essentially have all the same kinds of objectives. So I could see one person liking one of these games and also liking the other. So, if you want to try it, to me, that's what it sort of reminds me of. I didn't play all the way through it. I can't say for sure how the story pans out, but I didn't see anything that got into the cultural, social dynamics of Hong Kong. So I don't know if they do that eventually in the story, but I only got so far. So it's good to me, I guess. Sleeping Dogs, to me, was never a slog, and I like the story. So I like the story, I like the gameplay, and I see why it's a cult classic. And I most felt related, like, I most felt the characters were relatable and things. I just think it doesn't do the best job of portraying Asian culture, the nuances to it. So, to me, it's like a B because there's still some issues with it. Oh, okay. This one's a relaxing indie game. Okay, for a while there was a trend of people playing only Up. And that's a game where you're trying to climb up a bunch of objects to get to the top of something. And this is sort of similar conceptually, where it's a game called Grow Home, where you're sort of climbing a plant all the way up to a spaceship, and you're finding crystals to grab, and then after you beat it, they give you a bunch of seeds to look for to collect, and you can collect whatever crystals you're still missing. And it's kind of meant to be just a relaxing, atmospheric sort of game. I was able to beat it in about 90 minutes. So it fit within my regular time restrictions. But I've played this game before, I've played the sequel before. It's just okay from a kind of relaxing walking simulator like viewpoint. So if you like that kind of stuff, it's fun. Okay, Grow Home. It's kind of a small experience, small, short, sort of indie ish experience. It's a very basic game. It's kind of relaxing exploration stuff. So I'm fine just go and see with it. Okay, I played through most of Rise of the Tomb Raider. I got to like around 40% completion. And there's a few things that kind of stand out to me. It's literally a story that's get the MacGuffin, and it's sort of nothing else to it. So even if you compare this to some of the older Tomb Raider games, they'd try to have a few twists in the story. But this story is just find the divine source, pretty much. And the antagonist, it's sort of a race to find this divine source because it can grant immortality to someone. And the antagonist has a debilitating health issue. So they want to find the divine source for them to stay alive. And it's sort of like that's it to the story. There's pretty much nothing else to it, so it's really boring. I'm aware there's kind of a twist thing at the end, but to me it doesn't even compare to the older Tomb Raider stories. So, really, really basic story. That doesn't necessarily hurt a game. The thing that kind of bothers me that's most consistent throughout all this is that the Tomb Raider reboot Laura is designed in such a way to be like very small, seem very vulnerable, seem very weak, to gather as much sympathy as possible. So rather than making a compelling or sympathetic main character, it's like taking a puppy and then beating it up to make you feel sorry for the puppy. But the puppy doesn't have any personality or anything. So it's taking advantage of a character, trying to make a character seem cute and vulnerable and make you feel sorry for it by putting them in harmful circumstances. And to me, that's one of the worst ways possible to gain sympathy. And so you have a character who's in extreme situations, who lacks certain confidence or bravado that would be appropriate for the type of character that they are. If you look at the Uncharted series, like they more have personalities and character designs that are appropriate for this type of game. The Tomb Raider reboot stuff I find in many respects to be very similar to the Uncharted games. More in common with the Uncharted games than with the original Tomb Raider stuff. So it might be that if you like one, you'll like the other. I personally don't like the Uncharted series, really. But that's just me. I'm not saying the games are bad. But the good side of it, and this is sort of the most important side, is that the gameplay is pretty good for a third-person shooter. The platforming stuff, because it's like Uncharted platforming, which is kind of derivative of the Prince of Persia platforming that got sort of popularized. It's almost like I think about the sort of Uncharted style of platforming, it's almost like a combination of the Prince of Persia stuff that was on the PlayStation 2 and Assassin's Creed's like automatic free running stuff. Like those two things kind of combined, because it's very linear, where you have no options on to proceed forward. There's no left or right path. And it's automatic, like the Assassin's Creed free running stuff. So it ends up being inferior to both of those things, in my opinion. But the combat side is the best shining part of it. The whole upgrade system stuff I like. So all of that's good. But everything else is just kind of mediocre to a little bad. And then Rise of the Tomb Raider. I like the combat side of it, but I sort of hate other aspects of it. But I never got this feeling like it was a drag. So it never felt like it was a big chore to play it. And I could actually see myself trying to 100% it if I tried. And if I felt like it. So I think giving it that much credit to put it into C is about the best I could say for it. Okay, now time to spin the wheel again. So another relaxing kind of indie game.